Hello everybody, my name is Pedicab Guy. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about making a character for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. I have been playing Dungeons & Dragons for just over 4 years now. It is my favorite hobby. And at this point, I have also run the game as a Dungeon Master for many of my friends. I think I've been Dungeon Master for longer than I've been a player at this point. And when I first started playing Dungeons & Dragons, I was making my first character. I had no idea where to start. And I was very overwhelmed at the prospect of making one because that character sheet has a lot of information, a lot of boxes on it. So my dungeon master at the time came over, he sat down with me and walked me through the process of making a character. That was all well and good until I went to make my second character for a different campaign with a different dungeon master, and I had no idea where to begin. So the purpose of this video is to walk you through step by step the process of making a character for Dungeons & Dragons at level 1. And my hope is that you can use this video whether you are picking up dice for the very first time and this is your first character ever, or you've had a couple characters, played in a couple of games, and want to make a new one. Maybe it's been a while and you have kind of forgotten where to start, or maybe you're still just not quite sure where to begin with making a new character, and that is totally fine. I think we should all take joy in being beginners when we start new things. And so my hope is that you can use this video repeatedly. The process here will help you. And with all that being said, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you need is a character sheet. This one I found online just by Googling 5e character sheet PDF. It is a fillable PDF, which means you can edit and make changes to the sheet directly from your browser on your computer. It can then be downloaded with your changes. Just remember to save your work and make sure it downloads correctly before closing the tab. You can also print this PDF blank and use pencil to fill it in if you want. The link for this PDF is in the description below. The next thing you need is the Player's Handbook. You can purchase the book, though that is a little bit pricey. If you're on a budget, you can find the basic rules from the Player's Handbook for free on D&D Beyond. It is a great resource that I encourage you to explore. The link is also in the description below, and we're going to be using D&D Beyond today to fill out our character sheet. Next, you will want to name your character. This can be done later after you have the character ready to play if you're a bit stumped right now. We will name this character Anton. Looking at the far left, the first page of the character sheet, you will notice a column of 6 attributes. These are known as ability scores. I like to figure this part out first because everything that follows pretty much builds off of these numbers. There are 3 ways to do this. The first one is standard array, which gives you 6 numbers, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8, to distribute among each attribute. You can also roll for your ability scores by rolling 3 6-sided dice, adding the roll together, and that gives you 1 ability score. Or you can roll 4 6-sided dice, drop the lowest number, and add the rest to give you 1 ability score, and do that for each attribute. Or the third option, you can use a point buy system where each of your attributes starts at 8, and you have a pool of 27 points to distribute among them any way you want. Ask your dungeon master if they have a preferred method they would like you to use to find your ability scores. We do like to encourage communication here. I am going to use the standard array because it is simple and fairly balanced. Each class has a quick build guide in the player's handbook that gives you recommendations for each which attributes should be your highest ability scores. Very quickly, we're going to choose a class and view the quick build box to get those recommendations. Each class can be found on D&D Beyond by hovering your mouse over the Game Rules dropdown on the homepage. On the far left is a complete list of classes. Take time to look over each class and consider what kind of fantasy adventurer you want to be. I recommend the Fighter as a beginning class because it is easy to build and is extremely versatile. Except for the ability to use magic, a fighter can be practically anything. We select the class, Then scroll down until we find the quick build box. Here, it recommends strength or dexterity as our highest ability score, depending on if we want to focus on melee weapons or use archery or finesse weapons. Anton likes to be in the thick of battle, I like to think, so we'll focus on melee and pick strength as our highest ability score. Next, it recommends Constitution, which determines hit points, or Intelligence if we want to be an Eldritch Knight, which is a class path we can take starting at level 3. I think I would prefer to have as much health as possible, so let's pick Constitution. With our top two in mind, we can assign our ability scores. We'll put 15 in Strength, 14 in Constitution, 13 in Dexterity, 12 in Intelligence, 10 in Wisdom, and 8 in Charisma. After you assign the first two highest, the scores can really be anything you want. Um, I just kind of filled it in the way that I wanted to fill in my character. Now we determine what goes in the big part of these boxes, which are ability score modifiers. A handy chart can be found on page 173 of the Player's Handbook, or you can Google 5e ability scores and modifiers to find the same chart. It tells us that a score of 15 gives a modifier of +2, a score of 15 gives us +2, a score of 13 gives us +1, a score of 12 gives us +1, a score of 10 gives us +0 or just write 0, and a score of 8 gives us -1. These will change again when we pick a race. Back on D&D Beyond, scrolling to the top and hovering over the game rules gives us the drop down where we found our class. Now we can look to the right and find some boxes with the top one labeled races. We can select that and view all of our race options. Each race gives uh, different ability score bonuses, and humans get +1 to each ability score, which is the big number that determines the modifier. So I'm going to pick human. So I'll write that down on the character sheet. Back on D&D Beyond, we'll select the race details and scroll down until you find the human traits section. So let's adjust our ability scores, each by 1, and double check the modifier chart to see if any modifiers change. Strength, now 16, actually becomes +3, and dexterity, now 14, gives us +2. Every other modifier stays the same, though each actual ability score has increased by 1. The next trait we write down is our speed, which it says here is 30 feet. The speed box is found at the top center of the character sheet. Next, it tells us what languages we know, common and one of our choice. You can find a complete list of languages online by Googling 5e languages. I'm going to pick Elvish as my second language, and we're going to write both of these down in the language and proficiency box, which is on the bottom left. And once those are written down, that is everything we need from race. Now we really get into the meat of our character by choosing a class. We decided before that we were making a fighter, so let's go back to those class rules. Scroll back down to the quick build box. It recommends a background for us, which is soldier. We write that down at the top of our sheet and also make sure our class and level is also filled in. Very quickly, scroll back up to the game rules and hover over the dropdown. On the right under races, there's a box labeled backgrounds. We click that, then scroll all the way down until we find soldier, and it is a little far down. Once there, we are only going to concern ourselves with the skill and tool proficiencies and equipment for now. As a soldier, we are proficient in the athletics and intimidation skills. On our character sheet, the list of skills can be found just to the right of the ability scores, starting with acrobatics. You'll notice these are circles next to each skill, and we can click them to fill in the circles next to athletics and intimidation, indicating our proficiency with those skills. Back to the background page, it says we are proficient with a gaming set, which we can pick later, and land vehicles. We write this down in the same box where we wrote down our languages. Finally, we can copy and paste the list of equipment onto our PDF, unless of course you're using pencil and paper. The equipment box of our character sheet is on the bottom center of the first page. You can go ahead and delete the pouch of gold and put 10 in the GP or gold piece subbox of the equipment to save space, as I have done just now. Now we go back to the class details to fill out the rest of our character. Just below the quick build box is the fighter table, which breaks down our proficiency score and features for each level. We copy the proficiency score of +2 to the proficiency bonus box on our sheet, which can be found at the top of the sheet, just next to the strength box. Then we write down the 2 features we have at level 1. And we can write these in the features box, which is the large box on the bottom right of the sheet. So we'll write those down. If we go back to D&D Beyond and actually select the feature from the table, it takes us down to the details of that feature on that page. So our first feature is a fighting style. And if we look at these, I like to think that 2-weapon fighting sounds really cool for a melee fighter. So it says that I can add my ability modifier to the damage of an attack I make with the second weapon. So I'm going to go back to my sheet and write that down, 2-weapon fighting. You can write down the details in shorthand if you want, or you can just know that's what you have and come back to it later to get details if you forget. On D&D Beyond, it says that Second Wind is a feature that lets us regain hit points in the middle of a fight. At level 1, we can use a bonus action to roll a 10-sided die and add our level to the roll, and we regain that number of hit points when we use the feature. So I'm going to write down 1d10 plus 1 next to Second Wind, indicating the die that we can use. Scrolling back up a little, you find the class features section, and right under that are hit points information. The first thing is our hit dice, which we can roll during a short rest to regain any hit points we have lost since the last rest in the game. We get 1d10 per level, so I'm going to write that down in this box here. Next, our starting hit points are equal to 10 plus our Constitution modifier. That gives us 12, and we keep track of it in this box, and you can do that any way you want. I like to type my current over my total as such. It just makes sense to me. Hit points at higher levels we will cover in another video. Next, we get more proficiencies. Write these down in the same box as before, adding armor and weapon proficiencies. Our saving throws, which are special die rolls, are strength and constitution. This box is found right above the skills, and we fill in the circle next to strength and constitution. We then pick 2 more skills to be proficient with. I'll go with perception and survival, and I'll make sure I mark those. Now we choose our starting equipment. There are 4 sections with 2 options each. First, we pick armor. Because we're melee, we should probably pick the chainmail over the leather and bow. Google 5e armor to find a list of armor and determine your armor class with the armor you chose. A chain shirt gives us 13 plus our dexterity modifier, so a total of 15. And we'll type that in this box up here that looks like a shield. While we're up here, we'll also fill in our initiative, which is just equal to our dexterity modifier, so +2. The next equipment is either a martial weapon and shield or 2 martial weapons. Because of our 2-weapon fighting style, we will choose 2 martial weapons. You can Google 5e weapons for a complete list. I chose 2 longswords. I'll write those down. Now you can use other boxes, like the treasure box on the second page of the character sheet for additional equipment if you run out of room in the initial equipment box. Next, we can choose a light crossbow and bolts or 2 hand axes. I'm going to choose the crossbow because it has more range than throwing axes and does more damage. Finally, we pick a pack. The details of each pack can be found online by Googling the name of the pack. They hold things like torches and rope and rations. We'll give Anton a Dungeoneer's pack. And that is everything we need from class. Last thing we need to figure out before we can start playing is our attacks. The attacks and spellcasting box can be found in the very center of the character sheet. In the top half, we have space to detail 3 different attacks. We'll name the first 2 longsword because we're using 2 swords. The third we will name L crossbow, or light crossbow. So make sure you have those names written down. The next kind of column is the attack bonus. And for that, we add our proficiency score with the ability score modifier we use for that weapon. Each sword uses strength and the crossbow uses dexterity. So we'll put +5 and +4 in each attack bonus respectively. We can look at the list of weapons for each attack type, which is the next column we're filling in. Long swords deal 1d8 or 1 8-sided die slashing damage, and the crossbow deals 1d8 piercing damage. We can then add our ability modifiers to the end of the attack type, which is +3 for each sword and +2 for the crossbow. You'll want to make note of the crossbow's range, which is 80 to 320 feet. Now we have a character sheet that you can take to any table and begin playing. If you choose a class that uses magic, the class table and spellcasting features will tell you exactly what your spellcasting ability, spell save DC, and spell attack bonuses are. It'll also tell you how many spells you start with. Every spell list can be found on D&D Beyond in the game rules dropdown, kind of right in the middle there. You have all the rules for each spell, and they're all detailed. If you would like a more detailed video about creating a level 1 spellcaster, let me know in the comments below. If you liked what I had to say, consider hitting that like button. And if you like my content, I would love a subscription from you. So please consider that as well. And in my next video, I will be detailing your character's background and personality, as well as talking about their appearance to really flesh out your character and bring him to life. Until then, this is Patty Cap Guy, signing off.